The first cake I ever sold cost only $20. But when the customer left, I stood alone in my kitchen and cried. Not because of the money, because it was the first thing I had built for myself in almost 10 years. A few years earlier, my life looked very different. Back then, I did not own a business. I did not have confidence. I barely had hope. My name is Claire. I grew up in a quiet town called Maple Hollow. Small houses lined the streets. Everyone seemed to know each other. My parents believed discipline was everything. Good grades mattered. Good behavior mattered. Dreams did not. As a child, I loved creating things. I painted flowers. I sketched birds. I filled notebooks with drawings. Whenever my father saw them, he frowned. He always said the same thing. Art will never pay your bills. Focus on something useful. So I stopped showing my drawings. I kept my dreams hidden. They stayed inside me for years. Like seeds waiting underground. When I was 18, I met a man named Daniel. He was confident and charming. He made me laugh. He made me feel important. For a shy girl, that feeling was powerful. Nobody had ever looked at me that way. Nobody had ever made me feel special. I fell in love quickly. 6 months later, we got married. My parents thought it was a mistake. I thought it was the beginning of happiness. I was certain love would solve everything. We rented a small apartment in Fairview. The furniture was cheap. The rooms were tiny. But I was happy. A year later, our daughter Sophie was born. She had bright eyes and a beautiful smile. Holding her changed my life. She became my whole world. For a while, everything felt peaceful. Then Daniel slowly began to change. At first, it was little things. Things I tried to ignore. He criticized my clothes. He criticized my hair. He criticized the way I talked. Nothing seemed good enough. If I met friends, he became upset. If I stayed out too long, he asked questions. If I disagreed with him, he got angry. My world became smaller. Soon I stopped seeing friends. I stopped visiting people. I spent most days at home, waiting for him to return. When our son Ethan was born, things became harder. Money was tight. Daniel worked long hours. His patience disappeared. Some nights he came home angry. Sometimes he shouted. Sometimes he slammed doors. The children became afraid of the noise. I tried to keep peace inside the house. I apologized even when I did nothing wrong. I walked carefully around him, like someone crossing thin ice. One evening, I asked why he was late. It seemed like a simple question. But his face changed instantly. His eyes became cold. He yelled at me for almost an hour. The children cried in their room. I sat silently at the table. My hands would not stop shaking. The next day he brought flowers. He apologized. He promised it would never happen again. I wanted to believe him. So I forgave him. Then it happened again. And again. And again. Years passed that way. Arguments. Apologies. Promises. Disappointment. One afternoon, everything finally became clear. Daniel left his phone on the kitchen counter. A message appeared on the screen. Then another. At first, I looked away. Then I saw a heart emoji. Then another message. Then another. My stomach dropped. I already knew the truth. I just did not want to face it. Not yet. When I opened the messages, my world shattered. There was another woman. Not just one conversation. Months of conversations. Photos. Plans. Secrets. A whole second life. That night, I confronted him. I expected him to deny it. Instead, he barely looked at me. His answer was worse. She understands me better. That was all he said. Just one sentence. One sentence destroyed everything. I locked myself in the bathroom and cried. I cried until my eyes hurt. I cried until I could not breathe. I cried because I felt foolish. I had given him my youth, my trust, my loyalty. And none of it mattered. I wanted to leave. I truly did. But reality stood in front of me. I had no savings. No career. 2 young children. Nowhere to go. A few months later, Daniel accepted work in another state. He promised to send money home. He promised things would improve. I no longer believed him. After he left, the apartment became quiet. The silence felt strange. Lonely. But strangely peaceful too. For the first time in years, nobody was shouting. Nobody was criticizing me. Nobody was telling me what I could do. Or who I could be. Money arrived at first. Then less money. Then almost nothing. Bills started covering the kitchen table. I became terrified. Every morning I checked the mailbox. Every evening I counted dollars. Every night I worried about the future. I found a part-time cleaning job. I worked while the children slept. Some nights I came home exhausted. Too tired to think. One rainy evening, Sophie sat beside me. She watched me stare at unpaid bills. Then she asked a simple question. One I never forgot. "Mama, why are you sad all the time?" I looked at her little face. I wanted to answer. But no words came out. Only tears. That night, after the children fell asleep, I sat alone. The apartment was completely silent. A storm tapped against the windows. I felt broken. Then a strange thought entered my mind. A thought I had never allowed myself before. What if nobody was coming to save me? What if I had to save myself? I did not know it yet. But that question was about to change my life. And it would begin with something very simple. A chocolate cake. The next morning, I could not stop thinking about that question. What if I saved myself? The idea felt frightening. But it also felt strangely exciting. For years, I had lived for other people. My husband. My children. My parents' expectations. I could not remember the last time I had done something for myself. That afternoon, while cleaning the kitchen, I found an old notebook. Inside were recipes I had written years ago. Chocolate cake. Apple pie. Vanilla cupcakes. I smiled for the first time in days. Before marriage, I loved baking. The smell of warm bread always made me happy. The sight of a finished cake made me proud. Somewhere along the way, I had forgotten that part of myself. That evening, I baked a chocolate cake. Nothing special. Just a simple homemade cake. Sophie stood beside me. She stirred the batter carefully. Her face was covered with flour. We laughed together. It felt wonderful. For a few hours, I forgot my problems. I forgot the bills. I forgot Daniel. I forgot the fear. When the cake was finished, the kitchen smelled amazing. Sophie took one bite and smiled. "Mama, this is the best cake ever." Her words warmed my heart. The next day, I brought a few slices to my neighbor, Grace. She was a widow who lived downstairs. She had always been kind to us. After tasting the cake, her eyes widened. "You made this?" I nodded nervously. "It is incredible." Before leaving, she took a photo of the cake. I did not think much about it. 2 days later, Grace knocked on my door. She looked excited. "You have your first customer." I stared at her. "What?" She laughed. "A woman saw the photo online. She wants a birthday cake." For several seconds, I could not speak. A customer. Someone wanted to pay for my cake. The idea felt unreal. That night, I baked with more care than ever before. I checked every detail. Every decoration. Every color. Every flower made of frosting. When the customer arrived, I felt nervous. My hands were shaking. She looked at the cake and smiled immediately. "This is beautiful." Then she handed me $20. I thanked her, closed the door, and cried. Not because of the money, because somebody believed my work had value. For years, I had felt invisible. Now someone saw me. A week later, another order arrived. Then another. Then 2 more. The money was small. But the feeling was enormous. For the first time in years, I had hope. I bought better baking tools. Then new mixing bowls. Then a second-hand cake stand. Each purchase felt like a tiny step forward. The children noticed the change. I smiled more. I laughed more. The apartment felt lighter. Even the walls seemed brighter. Then Daniel came home unexpectedly one weekend. He walked into the kitchen and saw 3 cakes on the counter. His face darkened immediately. "What is all this?" I explained about the orders. The customers. The extra income. Instead of being happy, he became angry. "You don't need a business." His voice was cold. "You need to focus on the family." The old fear returned instantly. For a moment, I almost apologized. Then something inside me stopped. I looked directly at him. The way I never had before. "This is helping the family." I said it quietly. But I did not back down. Daniel stared at me. He seemed surprised. Almost confused. As if he had never expected me to disagree. The conversation ended there. But something important had changed. For the first time, I had defended myself. A few days later, Grace invited me to a small community gathering. Normally I would have refused. Normally I would have stayed home. But this time I said yes. The meeting changed everything. There were teachers, mothers, nurses, business owners, women from all kinds of backgrounds. Nobody judged me. Nobody criticized me. Nobody made me feel small. One woman named Linda owned a bakery. Another sold handmade candles. Another managed an online store. Listening to them opened my eyes. Maybe ordinary women could build businesses. Maybe dreams were not only for other people. Maybe they were for me too. That night, I sat awake long after the children slept. I looked around the apartment. The same apartment that once felt like a cage. For the first time, I saw possibilities. Not walls. Possibilities. I found a notebook and started writing. Goals. Ideas. Dreams. At the top of the page, I wrote 3 words. My cake shop. The words looked impossible. But they also made my heart race. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. Inside, a new future was beginning. And for the first time in almost 10 years, I believed happiness might still be waiting for me. Over the next year, my small business slowly grew. Not quickly. Not dramatically. But steadily. Every week brought a few new customers. Birthday cakes. Graduation cakes. Baby shower cakes. People started recommending me to friends. Then friends recommended me to strangers. Soon my kitchen felt too small. Every surface was covered with supplies. Boxes. Mixing bowls. Baking tools. I worked late into the night. Then woke before sunrise. Some days I was exhausted. But it was a different kind of exhaustion. For the first time, I was tired because I was building something. Not because I was surviving. One afternoon, Sophie came home from school smiling. She held a drawing in her hands. It showed a small bakery. There were flowers in the window. And a woman standing behind the counter. "That's you, Mama." I stared at the picture. My eyes filled with tears. Under the drawing she had written 3 words. Mom's Dream Bakery. I taped the picture above my kitchen table. Whenever I felt discouraged, I looked at it. It reminded me why I started. Meanwhile, Daniel became increasingly distant. Sometimes he disappeared for weeks. Sometimes he forgot to call the children. Sometimes he promised to visit and never arrived. The disappointment hurt them. Especially Sophie. One evening she sat beside me on the couch. "Mama, why doesn't Dad want to see us?" The question broke my heart. I wanted to protect her. But I could not lie. I hugged her tightly. And told her it was not her fault. After she went to bed, I cried alone. Not because of Daniel, but because I could see how much damage he had caused. The children deserved better. We all did. Several months later, a letter arrived. Inside were divorce papers. For a long time I simply stared at them. I thought I would feel devastated. Instead, I felt calm. Almost relieved. The marriage had ended years earlier. The paperwork was simply catching up. When I signed my name, my hands did not shake. I was not losing something. I was letting go of something that had already been lost. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Daniel moved away completely. The children rarely heard from him. At first that made me angry, then sad. Eventually, I accepted it. Some people choose responsibility. Others run from it. I could not control his choices. Only my own. That same year, an opportunity appeared. A small storefront became available downtown. It used to be a flower shop. The rent was low. The building was old. Most people ignored it. But when I looked through the dusty windows, I saw something else. I saw possibility. I saw my future. The idea terrified me. Renting a store meant risk. Real risk. If the business failed, I could lose everything. For weeks I could not decide. Then one morning I found Sophie's drawing again. Mom's Dream Bakery. I smiled. And called the landlord. 3 months later, the doors opened. The sign outside read, Claire's Sweet Corner. The first day was almost a disaster. I forgot supplies. The register stopped working. A cake nearly fell onto the floor. By closing time, I wanted to collapse. But when I counted the day's sales, I laughed. Not because the number was large. Because the bakery was real. The dream existed. People began stopping by every morning. Children bought cupcakes after school. Families ordered birthday cakes. Older couples sat by the window with coffee. Slowly, the bakery became part of the community. Years earlier, I had felt invisible. Now people knew my name. They greeted me on the street. They recommended my business. They believed in me. The biggest surprise came from Sophie. One afternoon she stood behind the counter. She was older now. More confident. More independent. She smiled and handed a cupcake to a customer. Then she looked at me. Mama, remember when you thought your life was over? I laughed softly. Yes. She smiled. Good thing you were wrong. I had no answer. Because she was right. One evening, after closing the bakery, I sat alone by the front window. The streets were quiet. The sky was turning orange. The same kind of sunset I used to watch years ago. Back when I felt trapped. Back when I felt hopeless. Back when I believed happiness belonged to other people. I thought about that frightened young woman. The woman who cried in secret. The woman who believed she had no choices. I wished I could talk to her. I would tell her something important. The road ahead will be hard. You will cry. You will fail. You will feel alone. But one day you will discover how strong you really are. And when that day comes, everything will begin to change. I locked the bakery door and stepped outside. The evening air felt warm. The bakery lights glowed behind me. Sophie and Ethan were waiting near the car. Laughing together. They waved when they saw me. I smiled and walked toward them. Years ago, I thought happiness would come from finding the perfect person. I was wrong. Happiness came when I finally found myself. And for the first time in a very long time, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be.